When I find people who are really good, who I get along with and who I think are just really good at their jobs, I try and keep them around. The problem is that when people are really good at their jobs, they're often working. And so it's a lot about timing when they're available. But you do the same thing. I mean, you have a network of people that you've collected along the way who, it's been a joy for me to sort of pull them into our universe, right?
Yes.
All the Firefly people and the Castle people, but also, actors that you've worked with on multitudes of things.
Yeah. And we talked about this too, because so much of it is luck.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it is timing. But then what do you do with that opportunity? Once you land it, do you kick back and say, oh, good, I'm good now? Or do you say, all right, I'm going to make this the best it can possibly be?
Yeah. And it's a lot of work.
Once we were spacemen. I tend to play weird people, usually aliens and robots and things that don't have romance.
I once didn't get a job where they were looking for a Nathan Fillion type. Once we were spacemen.
Once we were spacemen.
Alan Tudyk.
Nathan Fillion, how are you?
I'm great. I am eagerly awaiting your big introduction.
All right. Once we were spacemen. It was a time. We were in space. We were men. It was a brief and exciting time. But now, it is not once, it is now. But we'll always be spacemen.
Yeah, it sounded great. I was a little concerned. I thought you're having a bit of a conniption on that last bit.
No, I just almost went into a fit. I got right at the edge of it and pulled back.
Pulled back from the fit.
Yep.
Alan, at this point of recording our podcasts, I think we started recording these almost a year ago.
Really?
Yeah, it's been almost a year. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I was in Vancouver.
But at this point of our recording them, some of our episodes have actually hit the air waves. So here we are at a podcast. This was actually recorded. So we're doing a little intro to our podcast. This was actually recorded during the last Comic-Con.
I was so there and I was so ready to do this podcast. And then...
You got called away.
Yeah, the news hit that Resident Alien was canceled. It was no longer going to be... My residency had been cut short. My hospital was closing and my home planet was calling me back, if you know what I'm saying. Saying we were canceled. When that news hit, suddenly a Comic-Con that had a schedule that was accommodating of doing this, it blew up because everybody wanted to talk to us about how does it feel? It was a very strange goodbye tour, a press goodbye tour, which I don't know that's ever been done before. You don't get to do those. You just get cut off during the off season and you sort of send out a tweet and that's it.
Usually the cancellation process is a lot less ceremonious, you're saying.
Yes, it's just like a flush. You don't sing, you don't salute it before it goes down. You just let it go. And that's, we were getting a full salute and a song, man. It was like we were in a hospital bed and everyone was filtering through going, I loved you when you were alive. I forgive you for all that crappy stuff you did. I love you. And then they'd leave and the next person would come in. I knew you were going to die like this, you dog. And then that person would leave and we'd say, who was that?
So as a result of your being called away at the last minute, you weren't able to be present for when I was actually doing a podcast with Alexi Hawley, who is the head writer, showrunner, executive producer of a little show that you came in, was a part of, that I like to spend a lot of time on, called The Rookie.
Yes, he was the director for the last episode that we did.
That's right.
He was my director.
He wears a lot of hats.
And it's weird because he's short and you can't really get a good sense of his height because of all the hats.
A lot of hats.
You're like, where does Alexi end and where do the hats begin? I'm uncertain still.
We may never know. So you know Alexi a little bit. It is my hope, Alan, that by the time you listen to this podcast, that you might know Alexi a little better.
I think that everybody's going to get to know him a lot better because he's going to be chatting with you. You guys have a shorthand. You do a lot of work together. You know each other probably better than most on the show because you're business partners.
And we go back to, he was a writer on Castle and then came back to run Castle for us as well. So I have a lot of history with Alexi. I really respect and admire the way he runs a business. This is our first podcast where we're talking to somebody who's not an actor. This is our first non-actor podcast interview. I think we're both very much aware of how in our industry, it's about how art meets finance. And usually it's people on one side or the other. But Alexi's job, he has to bridge that gap. He's got a foot in both worlds.
So he's a pimp and a sex worker. He's pimping himself out. That is a special breed you don't necessarily want to run into. You got to know how to deal with people like that.
That is one way of looking at it for sure. I don't know that that's how I would describe it, but that is certainly a way.
If I had been there that day, I would have brought that up to him. I wish I had been there. I'm looking forward, as I'm sure everyone else here, to hearing a little bit about how you guys met, what it takes to make, well, I guess he could probably talk about Castle as well, but The Rookie. And what does it take to be a showrunner, a director, all that stuff? Who is he? Who is this guy?
Yeah, we kept it pretty much. We talked about our like how he began. Listen, I don't want to go into it. You're going to hear all about this. So let's you and I meet again after this podcast, when then we'll get some hard hitting questions out of you about how you think it went. Alexi,
Hey,
thanks for doing this.
happy to do it.
So right now we're presently, you and I, enjoying Comic-Con.
Yes, I just got here a few hours ago. You've been here a few days, but our panel at Rookie is tomorrow.
A rookie panel tomorrow, which we have lovely plans for. We can talk all about it because there's no spoilers. This isn't going to come out at all. But we have great plans for this.
Yes, we do. Very exciting. A little fun music interruptus and a great sizzle reel.
I always think these panels, I think there's people out there who have questions. Certainly there's some information we can give out that could be interesting, perhaps to somebody. But it always grinds my gears when I see panels and they're not entertaining.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the onus upon yourself to make sure it's entertaining.
Oh, yeah. It helps us. It also helps make it an interesting panel. But yeah, the fans are there to see fun. They want charming. They want fun. They want Daddy Cop. They've
been waiting in line. They're out there in the sun. They're waiting all year for Comic-Con, and they're going to come into a room and it just dies in the room. You don't want that. Okay.
Well, it's tough. I mean, it's a 2,000 seat, maybe hall. These places are enormous. They're barns.
Got big ones.
We got a big, I think Sanders said it was a couple thousand seats, but it's
nice.
big. But yeah, so how do you establish any intimacy? You have to do it by sort of being big, right?
Yeah. And it's a stacked deck too. Everybody there is pretty much going to be a fan. So it's always such a welcome, such a warm room.
Yes, very much so.
You always feel well received.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. People ask me all the time, hey, I want to become an actor. What do I? There's no one way that if you want to be an actor, do this and you'll be an actor at the end of it. You are a writer, showrunner, executive producer, director now. Congratulations.
Yeah.
How does one slip into your career?
Well, as you said, there's no one way, right? If you were getting into business making widgets, I could tell you how to go do that. But to be a writer is a different muscle than to be a director or an actor and showrunning is its own conversation a little bit, but
It's a totally different job than writer.
It is. I describe it as one of the true left brain, right brain jobs, because you're both head of the entire creative entity of the show, from obviously selling the idea and writing the scripts, but also running writers' rooms and coming up with story, and then prep and production, overseeing that, and then post editing, sound mixes, all that.
You're dealing with budgets, and
that's the left brain side. That's all the management. And, you have 300 people who work on the show that are, under your supervision and budgets. And, some episodes are too big. Some episodes you have to make smaller to pay for those. You lose a location the night before. What do you do? COVID was a big thing for us, as it was with many people. The actor got sick, but we only have the location for one day tomorrow. So what do we do? And all that kind of stuff. So so that's a whole thing. And I think part of the mistake that happened when, it wasn't really on purpose, but when streaming blew up how much TV there was, And so you had first-time showrunners all over the place who really, some of them were fairly new to television. They'd maybe done a show or they sold something and they had no training, right? They didn't know they didn't even know what the job was before they were thrown in the deep end. And it's not an easy job to sort of learn as you go. You sort of need to know how TV works before you can.
Is there no training program for show running?
The training program really is being a staff writer on a show in which you can go to set. You learn how to break story, you learn how to write and what the rewrites entail. You're watching through prep why certain things were much more expensive than you thought they were going to be when you wrote them. So you have to make them smaller. And then you go to set and you watch it get made. And then you end up in editing. Like all that is the building blocks of understanding how a TV show is made.
Okay, let's go timeline.
Sure.
You're a kid. When does it occur to you, I'm going to try writing. I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to write.
I mean, the honest truth is I was always creative. I grew up in a very creative household. My mom was a writer and a painter.
Yes.
And
she was nonfiction.
Well, she did some kids' books.
Okay.
She was all over the place in a way that I identify with as a writer who's done everything from comedy to horror to action to whatever. One of her first things she wrote was A Child's Guide to Freud, which it was a very tongue-in-cheek but very smart book on terminology from Freudian psychology put into a family situation. So like when daddy does this, it's sublimation.
Would you read her books when she wrote them?
Those books I think predated or were very early in my life, but she also did How to Turn Lemons into Money, which was A Child's Guide to Economics, and then How to Turn Up into Down into Up, which was a kid's book on inflation. They're all so smart because they really do boil it down to like Lucy's got a lemonade stand and Johnny is her employee and like all that stuff. Super smart. But she also wrote one of the first books on incest back in the 70s. And she never went to college. She was not a professional. She wasn't a psychologist. She was interested in stuff. And so she also wrote books on kids in the mental health system and kids in foster care. And then my dad was an actor up until my brother and I were born, when he realized that it's hard. I mean, maybe you don't know actually because you've been doing pretty well for the last few years, but like a lot of acting is waiting for the phone to ring. You got an audition. Did you get the part? So I think by the time he was married with 2 twin boys being born, he realized that was not a life for somebody who needed to take care of his family. And also maybe he was sick of it. I don't know. We didn't really talk about that. But I grew up in a very creative household. But high school, coming out of college, I was playing drums, trying to be a rock star in a band in New York with my brother.
That's right.
And then met my wife in a band. And so it was only when I was like sitting in front of a computer at a day job at a law firm where I was a legal assistant, I just started writing because I was bored. And, I gravitated towards features, towards movie scripts, and sort of taught myself how to write. And, the way I taught, I never took a class, but what I did was I would watch movies and I would take notes, which I never looked at again, but I'd take notes. I'd be like, okay, at 2 minutes, this happens. At 8 minutes, this happens. At 15 minutes, this happened. And it's sort of trying to internalize structure, because to me, structure is the thing. If you learn structure as a writer, you'll work forever because you really need to understand how something works, right? And you have to know how it works even to break the rules, right? Memento is the most structured thing you'll ever see. It has to be because it's backwards, right? So when Picasso was an amazing representational artist, he had to be before he started to take it all apart and do cubism and all that kind of stuff. So to me, that was what I was trying to get into my DNA, was like how it works, where you need a twist in an action movie or a horror movie, because there are different places and that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, I never did that with television, but by the time I got to TV 6 or 7 years into my career, because I started out doing movies, I think I'd watched enough television growing up that I sort of had a sense. And then it was just about translating the sort of feature model into television. But yeah, so I came out of college, I got married, I had a day job, I was playing drums, and I started writing and ultimately got an agent, got a manager, but it wasn't easy and nobody does it the same way. And so I ended up getting an agent through having done stage readings with a filmmaker who really liked the script I'd written. And one of the actors was William H. Macy, and who this guy was friends with. And basically, we did a stage reading at the Tiffany Theater in LA, which is no longer. It was Bill Macy, Juliana Margulies, Felicity Huffman, Giancarlo Esposito. I mean, these are the people who, on their own nickel, like did the thing, couldn't get an agent to even come to the reading. So, which was crazy. So anyway, basically I'm like, can Bill Macy get somebody from his agency to come, which he did. And the guy ultimately hip pocketed me, which means I wasn't an official client, but he looked out for stuff for me. And so I started to work a little bit, but I had kids. Like I've never been in the business without having kids, which means nothing was optional. Like I needed to succeed. I needed to work. It made me a hustler, all that kind of stuff. So like I had several things that I had done, including I did a production on a movie called Swim Fan. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Fatal Attraction in high school.
Oh, yes.
But like I couldn't even go to set because I still had a day job because I don't pay that great. I couldn't quit my job. So it wasn't until I got 3 writing assignments back to back to back that we moved to LA. And that was 2003, I think.
Where were you doing? You were in New York?
I was in New York. Yeah. I was in New York.
So somebody believes in you. Somebody sees what you're doing and says, I'm going to keep an eye on this kid. You get some opportunities. They start to roll. When does the show running come in?
So that happened.
Was that the next step?
No. I dipped my toe into television. I sold a pilot, which I wrote, I think for the CW, which didn't get made. And then the writer's strike happened 2007, 2008.
Yes.
Coming out of that, super in debt. And I had 2 kids, and it was bad, like kind of debt. And ultimately, my brother Noah had his first television show get greenlit, which was The Unusuals on ABC. So I went to New York because he wanted to write it and shoot it in New York. And so at that point, we had just had our 4th. So I left my wife as a single mother of 4 and went to New York for 6 months, basically, to work on that show. And so that was my sort of first foray into TV. But after that, I ended up on Castle with you.
That's right.
For 3 seasons. But The Rookie was really my first sort of solo show running experience. So
that actually kind of amazes me. Something I learned about you when we worked together on Castle was you're honest and you have integrity.
Oh.
And I feel like because you are honest, you have to make cool decisions because you're not going to lie about anything. So you keep everything up front, which is something I very, very much admire about you. You run a tight ship. And what I really enjoy about you is you are successful, but not at the cost of anyone in particular.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, Hollywood is hard, right? This business that we're in is bad. There's a lot of money to be made and there's a lot of good stuff that gets made, but there's a lot of cruelty and coldness, and you hear no 90-something% of the time as a writer and as an actor, right? Like it's just, no is the default. It's very hard to get a yes. Saying yes means putting yourself out there, and taking a risk and stuff like that. So I think for me, my feeling has always been like the business is hard enough. My job is to create a space where it's easy, which doesn't mean it's an easy job. But I also very firmly believe that if I do my job, which sometimes could mean going into the office at 4:30 in the morning and staying till whatever, but if I do my job, then the show's going to run because, I'm not passing the buck. And then the other thing I do is I hire people who are really good at their jobs. And
That's
I'm like,
the other thing.
Can you take that off my plate? Oh, thank God. Thank you so much.
How do you find the Marco Blacks, the Bill Rose, how do you entice them to say, this is where you need to be? How do you get those people? How do you keep them close?
Some people came to me fresh. Marco was not somebody I'd worked with before, who's our line producer, but he had come highly recommended to me. And so that ended up being quite a great marriage.
Yeah.
Because showrunner and line producer work hand in hand because, a lot of budget, a lot of production issues, all that kind of stuff. But I also sort of try and collect people along the way. Terrence, who I work with on Castle, came over to Rookie when I started it.
You collected me on the way.
I collected you on the way. Brim Malone, I collected on the following. When I find people who are really good, who I get along with and who I think are just really good at their jobs, I try and keep them around. The problem is that when people are really good at their jobs, they're often working. And so it's a lot about timing when they're available. But you do the same thing. You have a network of people that you've collected along the way who, it's been a joy for me to sort of pull them into our universe, right?
Yes.
All the Firefly people and the Castle people, but also, actors that you've worked with on multitudes of things.
Yeah. And we talked about this too, because so much of it is luck.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it is timing. But then what do you do with that opportunity? Once you land it, do you kick back and say, good, I'm good now? Or do you say, all right, I'm going to make this the best
Yeah.
it can possibly be.
Yeah, and look, it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work, and first seasons are really hard. Our first season was a bit of a clusterfuck in several different ways, and some of it was from me not having showrun a first year show before. I mean, Following was season 3, Castle was season 8. So, I made some mistakes. And so we ended up way over budget in the first 3 or 4 episodes. And then I sort of learned how to make the show, because every show is different, right? What works on Castle doesn't necessarily work on The Rookie, right? Castle, we were only out a couple of days an episode, and I think it was less days of shooting. Rookie, we're out 4 to 5 days an episode, because we're out driving around in the patrol cars and all that kind of stuff. And so there are things that are expensive that you don't realize are expensive. Parking a whole crew in LA can be like tens of thousands of dollars just to park. But yeah, so there was stuff that I just didn't know that I didn't know until we got into season 1 and really had to learn how the show worked and how to write. And by this point, the good news is, like, we're really good at making the show at different price points, which, like Prague, I pitched going to Prague for our season 8 premiere, which is not a thing. Like, network television shows don't do that. I mean, every once in a while, like, you'll get a giant hit show right out of the, like, Modern Family. I think they went to Hawaii once, but for the most part, shows don't do that. You could definitely see people go like, that's not normal. What's that going to cost? All that kind of stuff. But I think at the end of the day, because I didn't ask for any money, I'm like, we'll cover it. Like, I don't need extra money to go to Prague. And we're going to go $1 million over on that first episode. But I know how to win it back, over the course of 18 episodes, to the point where we'll end up under budget or on budget by the end of the season. And I now have a track record where they were like, okay. And so we got to go to Prague, which was
Did
awesome.
you learn that on The Following? How to do that balancing act?
No, not as much. I mean, look, Rookie's a bit of a unicorn. The patrol show aspect of what we do, which is what I love about it, is that anytime you guys get out of the shop, out of the patrol car, anything can happen, right? It's not a case of the week where, like Castle, body dropping, teaser, catch the guy at the end, accuse everybody of murder that we ever talked to, which was always funny to me. But for Rookie, like, anything can happen. And so we have all these different kinds of episodes we can do. And so we can do the big stunty event episodes like going to Prague, but we can also do much smaller episodes that are like the one we did last season with Harper in the hospital, where James had been shot and you were trying to track down who was responsible, but you couldn't tell her that you were the one who saw James kissing that woman. Like, that episode came in hugely under budget, because we designed something that was a lot more standing sets and a lot more stuff like that. So at this point, I know enough, but that sort of range doesn't exist on most shows. Like, on The Following, you're chasing guys every week. You gotta do that.
Would you consider yourself a new showrunner? You've been doing a decade, over a decade now.
Yeah, at this point, no. Partly because I also, at one point was kind of running 3 shows at the same time.
Yes, you were.
I mean, I did co-run Feds with Terrence, but The Recruit I ran by myself as well. And so, yes, at one point, all 3 were going at the same time. So, yeah, that's a little bit into the deep end. So, no, I don't consider myself new anymore.
You were working 3 shows at once and looking at a 4th.
Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, that year, I did 52 episodes of television. It's a lot. It's a lot. And, you get tired, but I love it. And that's the thing. It's like, I get that same sense from you, on set.
Yeah,
like,
but I've got a great job. Your job is hard.
No, I love my job. Yes, it's hard. And look, at this point, you don't necessarily have to navigate the operational challenges that I do. But I mean, acting is not easy. I do it occasionally on the show, and it is its own thing. But I love what I do. I've been trying to do that. I mean, you talk about, how do you get there? Like, what was your journey? And for me, it was always getting to a place where I felt like I was in control of my destiny. It's funny, people do ask you about your career. I forget if we've ever talked about this, and you're like, your career is whatever job you got offered. Like,
yes, we did talk about
it. It is the smallest number of people who hit a grand slam out of the gate. They write the $100 million movie that makes a fortune, and they can choose their path, or the actor comes out.
You get to pick what they do next.
Most of us, like, you go up for 5 auditions and one person says yes, and that's your thing. I mean, I ended up in procedural television because I did The Unusuals, which got me onto Castle, and which got me onto The Following. And even though I do a lot of other stuff, people want to see you as one thing. So that's how that career sort of went the way it went.
Then you started directing.
Yeah.
Had you always wanted to direct? When did that bug bite?
I don't think it had been in the front of my head doing it. I do think that even way back on the feature days, like the movies, I was the last writer standing on the Exorcist prequel as well, the Rennie Harlan version, not the Paul Schrader version. And so I definitely had experienced the way I saw it and the way I put it down on the script being translated by a director very differently. So, and then coming into TV, and part of it is the collaborative process of TV and filmmaking, which is, it takes all of us, right? Like I can write something and then you're going to elevate it, right? And then the hope is the director elevates it visually or story-wise, and that, and costumes and casting and props and effects and stunts, like all of them are elevating what you write. But yeah.
You hope.
Or you hope. Yeah, definitely. I've ended up in editing going, the worst part is when you end up editing and you ask, do we have, and the answer is always no. Like I've done those episodes where you're like, do we have a close-up? No. Do we have a shot over that? No. And you're like, it's going to be a challenge. But so I, at some point, because I am a very visual writer, I feel like the scripts you can have a vision that you can read off the page and go, oh, okay, I know what is supposed to be happening here. But, I grew up doing art and drawing and fine art and stuff like that too. So I do have a visual sense. And so, yeah, at some point I felt like directing was the next logical step.
Let's talk about The Rookie.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And back at you.
We had a 100th episode celebration where some lovely reps from ABC came down and said, everybody's saying some really nice things. These were having like little toasts and speeches were going on. And she gave us some numbers. And she said, here's something you guys are doing in season 5 that's never been done before. And she started talking about some demographics that every show goes down in these demographics in season 5. It just doesn't happen. And we went up.
Yeah.
And then season 7, we went up again.
Yeah.
You wrote an article recently for Variety.
Yeah.
I've been reading a couple articles about your article.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's other people have been writing about that.
Oh, interesting.
One was in Collider. Anyways.
Oh, okay.
Where you basically went over why you think this show is a success. Part of it is the TikTok of it all.
Yes.
Easily digestible pieces that can catch people's attention and draw them into our show, which is starting now with an audience of 10-year-olds.
Yeah, no, the age range on our show is pretty unicorn-like. Like, I mean, so many people have told me over the last 2 seasons, like my 10-year-old, my 13-year-old, their entire 7th grade class is obsessed with The Rookie. It goes all the way up into, senior citizen type territory as well. Yes. So, they can't even measure for below 18, right? 18 to 49 is the beginning of their measurements. So they don't even know it's a little bit of opaque to the network, what that number really is, but we know because we just saw streaming charts for the first 6 months of this year.
Yes.
Which showed us 8th out of every show, living or dead, right? Because that streaming chart, anything that's streaming that has existed currently or existed before, we were number 8 with, I think it was 15.6 billion minutes of viewing. And that was just in the US.
And with a quarter of the episodes that other shows on that list had.
Correct. We had 120 something, I think, on that list. And the closest one to us was 280. And then you went up in Grays to like 500 and something. So yes, with far less episodes, we were up there with the big boys.
Is there anybody in your realm, in your part of the industry that's patting you on the back saying, hey man, look at that?
Yeah, look, everybody's very happy with it, for sure. I do feel a great sense of accomplishment about it because, it means that you're resonating with people. I do think that, I'm talking a little bit about the article, but I think our show is set up really well for the TikTok generation because every episode has so many different flavors. We do have sometimes teasers or one scene stories that are funny or tell us a complete story within a minute or something like that. Very digestible for TikTok, like literally as if we designed it for TikTok, which we didn't, but I have been cognizant of it for sure. But I do think that's also helped us is that, and I also talk to people who don't actually watch the show, but have seen a ton of the show in 2-minute bites. Now, do we see any of that money? No, we don't. So that's an issue of itself. But no, I do think that ultimately we are one of those shows that have become comfort food for the what I call the anxiety generation, which is the sort of, it's not like a Gen Z thing. It's literally, I think, the last almost 20 years since the economic crash under Obama, and like people coming out of college thought they were going to have jobs, and then they didn't. And through the pandemic, and obviously what's going on with Trump and politics in this country and all that, like there's just an underlying anxiety that exists. And I think shows that have a lot of episodes, because that matters, right? Because they're comfort food. You put them on. They watch them first run and love them, and then they become the thing that they put on in the background while they're doing something, which doesn't mean they don't know them. They'll quote them complete, like they know those episodes. But just spending time with John Nolan and Lucy Chen and, Harper and all these, they become family. I mean, it's what TV's always been since we were kids, right?
Yes.
Like we would, we were talking earlier, like you'd watch Cheers with your family, and,
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I've often said that when I became an actor, it was because it was stage acting. I was up on stage. There's this immediate visceral response. If you do something great or if you do something terrible, you'll know in an instant. On television, you don't have that anymore. The reward system is very, very different. And what I found that the reward is for me now is when people say that what you're doing is meaningful to me in some way. And my absolute favorite is, your show is something I watch with my family. We get together. It's something that I watch with my dad. It's the way we connect. I watched it with my mother before she passed. She was dying from cancer, but these were the times that she would be without pain, and we would be entertained. These are the rewards I get now. This is the applause I sense now. But I mean, we're having a good time. I do love my job. You've really assembled a fantastic community. It takes, it's 42 minutes to watch our program, but it takes 8 days of long hours to go out there and make it.
Right.
And those are the hours that's how I spend that's my life. That's how I spend my life.
Yeah.
It's time well spent. I really enjoy that time. To know that, I forget sometimes that people are watching, to know that people are watching and getting something out of it, that reward.
Yeah. What's rewarding for me is that at the end of the day, I mean, look, I feel like we're a show that people look forward to watching, which is exciting to me. It's what I strive to do, but it doesn't mean we're light, right? Like we do have a lot of comedy stuff, but we've had some series regulars fall by the wayside in tragic ways. We've had serial killers. We've had really dark episodes, and the fact that those are still family episodes because the world is hard out there, and that you still have 10 and 11 and 13-year-olds. We don't do anything graphic. We don't tell stories about sexual violence or anything like that, because I just don't think that's, for the most part, in our wheelhouse to do. But even so, like we have stakes in our show. Bad things happen. And so I appreciate that we still have the volume of people watching, even though, we're not just a comedy, right?
Now, I keep talking about this. Firefly was my favorite job of all time that I had ever had. That set the bar for me until now. Now The Rookie is the new bar. And it's a long-lasting, it's been almost a decade we've been doing this. It's fantastic. It's a golden show. It's the unicorn show.
Right.
I'm having a great time. But it's not without its challenges, clearly.
Yeah.
You've brought our show through COVID, through a strike.
Yeah.
What are the greatest challenges facing you in making a TV show?
I mean, you named a couple of them. Obviously I said the first season being a bit of a clusterfuck was one of them. But yeah, it's literally just trying to navigate how to keep the show driving forward and being as good creatively as it has been and as consistent, because I do feel like we're super consistent. I don't think we've done a single episode that I don't think is great, which is, I was told coming up, there was actually sort of math involved for showrunners or creators about, like, in a typical season, you will have X number of great episodes, X number of good episodes, which usually outnumber the great episodes, and then a few that are fine, and then there are a few that you're like, oh fuck, how did that happen? We've never had that on, at least in my mind, we've never had that on the show.
Yeah, no, I'm shaking my head. I don't.
And so I'm super proud of that. But yeah, no, there were a lot of obstacles, and obstacles to not only keeping the show on the air, but taking care of the cast and the crew that are our family, right? Because the pandemic, the strike, like that's, as I said, we have somewhere in the 300, people who work on the show top to bottom. And like, those are people with families, those are people with mortgages and stuff like that. And so, we're lucky because as a show that traditionally does At this point, I think our seasons are 18, but we've done 22 several seasons. We've also only done 10 in the strike year and 14 in the pandemic year. But just how do you navigate keeping the ball driving forward? I mean, with the strike, I was on the phone with the network on the sort of showrunner capacity going, we can be up and running in a month. Like the second the strike is over, don't wait on us. We'll write scripts. Like, I need to get people back to work. And so I think we were if not the first, I think Swap might have maybe beat us or been right there with us, but we got up as fast as we could because I knew we'd been on strike forever.
Whenever I'm on set, I try to make people feel as comfortable as I can. We had guest stars. I try to make sure they feel welcome, because if they are welcome and they are comfortable, they feel safe, that's when you're going to get the best work out of them.
Yep.
Something that you have done a couple of times, once during COVID, once during the strike, was you set up a rookie relief fund. You made sure that if there was someone in financial straits, they could simply send in an email and you would deposit money into their account for them to take care of them.
Yes. Yeah. Don't make it sound like it's just me though, because you were, you and I, and after Mark Gordon during the strike, that, we put aside money to take care of our cast and crew, whoever needed it. It made a huge difference to some people.
Huge difference. And like I said, as far as, trying to make people comfortable gives them their best work. What you did was basically saying, we're not going to let you or your families suffer. We're going to make sure you guys are okay. Let me tell you, the kind of community you built with that has been phenomenal. And people still talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And the loyalty that you've garnered with that, I applaud you, my friend.
I appreciate that. Again, you were right there you were right there with me. I might have suggested it, but you were right there with me. And look, it's the right thing to do. And, for us to be in a position, enough of a successful position that we can.
I agree. It's the right thing to do. I just don't know that everyone would do that. I don't know anyone else who has.
I don't necessarily either, but that's not to say that that there aren't people who did. But look, I mean, it's tough because the economic reality of show running and TV these days it's a contracting market. There's a whole story to get into, but the way writers and actors are getting paid has gotten more challenging for people to get bumps or to get raises.
Yes.
Even accomplished showrunners are now, there aren't a lot of overall deals anymore, which overall basically means that, you make a deal with the studio for usually a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, where you get a set salary, where you just get paid that every week, every month, basically. It does mean that you don't get like individual script fees, or if you do a pilot, you probably won't get paid for that script, but you do get the guarantee of X amount of dollars every month. But those deals are harder to get, which means you end up with these, what they call showveralls, which is like just a show deal where they hire the showrunner. And, a lot of these places have started really lowballing people. Like, they had an expectation to make a certain amount of money because it's a lot of work. And even to the point where some places are basically, they've set a number. Like, we pay you, I can't remember what it is, but X amount of dollars a week for post, as if post is not as much work as when the show's in production. So you basically get less money to post-produce the show and take it or leave it. And so the economics of TV have gotten harder for the majority in the same way that they have for America as a whole. Obviously, the top 0.1% make a lot, and then most people below that don't make anywhere near as much and don't get the same benefits and the same raises and all that.
Outside of the show, hobbies?
I remain a drummer.
Yay.
I still play. Beckett, my youngest, has been learning for a few years, so I use that to get a drum kit in the living room. Although what's funny is I had an electronic kit in my office at the house that we were in before this one, and now I don't actually have an office at home in the new house. And so my wife did not care for the look of the electronic kit in the living room. And so twist my arm, I got to go get a nice drum kit for the living room. So I still play, I love playing softball. With rookie team, won the championship last year. Woohoo. It's one of the few places I can turn my brain off, is going either that or working out or stuff like that. But
how much time do you have?
I don't have much.
That's the thing.
I don't have much. So
you're a family man, you're a working man.
Yeah.
At one point, 3 shows looking at number 4.
Yeah.
How many you got now? Is it now one, but you're looking at two?
Yeah. So where The Rookie obviously is season 8. We just, we're started shooting episode 3 today. The spinoff pilot is sort of in process, is I guess what I can say about that. There's a script that people are really happy about. We are just sort of focusing on timelines. So that is going on. And then I have a show that I sold to Hulu called The Envoy, which is based which is based on Roger Carstens, who is the real life, now former, the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs. So he's the guy who brought home Brittany Griner from Russia and Evan Gershkovich from Russia. He brought home over 70 Americans during his time in
You brought
this
him to
job.
set. We met him. What a pleasant man. He was
he is an incredible man. So Adam Saralski, who is somebody I did The Recruit was sort of loosely inspired by, had written an article for Vanity Fair about Roger, and we optioned that and then set up the show at Hulu. So that is sort of waiting a pickup at this point to start writing it.
It must be easier for you now to have the ear of a network to pitch a show, to get something that. At what point did your reputation precede you and people start?
It might have existed earlier, but I really started to feel it in the last couple of years, honestly. With Recruit, the success of Recruit and Rookie, I think it's been a bit of a snowball. I've told you, and we've talked before about how this town always manages to tell you you're not all that.
Yeah, humble you. Yeah.
Right. So I had, and I can tell the story because none of the players involved are in those jobs anymore, but I had come off of co-running The Following, co-running Castle, and Castle got canceled. And so I started
what? Yeah, I knew that.
You are so late. So I had started developing, and so I came up with this pilot pitch, and this was right after, I'm going to call it The Last of Us, but it's not. What's the the Milo Mandy Moore show that was a tearjerker?
The show Alexi is thinking of is This Is Us.
Anyway, so it had come out after that. And so I came up with a pilot idea about, it was a kind of a bucket list show. It's a guy who got diagnosed and he's got things that he wants to accomplish before. And it was totally a solid show. It was a little bit out of what I'd normally done, but I took it to a producer who had been a former studio head at ABC Studios. And so the way TV works is the studio is who actually makes a deal with you to create a show, and they're the ones who actually pay the bills to make the show. And then they license the show to the network, right? So for Rookie, it's Lionsgate and now 20th Television for ABC. And so they pay the bills. And then, so basically what ended up happening is I took this pitch in, and if they want to do it, what they'll make is, they call it an if-come deal, which means if we sell it, this is what we'll pay for you. That way you can't go sell it and then tell them I want $10 million for the script, because you've already pre-negotiated what they're going to pay you if you sell this.
Gotcha.
But shorthand, it costs them nothing. And IFCOM costs them $0, because if you don't sell it, they don't have to pay you anything. ABC Studios, who we did Castle with, would not give me an IFCOM on that. And I just come off being a showrunner on Castle, and they were like, yeah, we don't see it, so we're not going to make an IFCOM with you. And
you don't think that was about the show? You think that was about you?
I don't think it was about me. I think it was just not a wake-up call, but just a nice, quote-unquote, reminder that I thought, coming off of being a fancy showrunner, like I meant something, but they're like, yeah, no.
Gotcha.
But then the irony, to our benefit, is that I think literally a month later, because I was also working on The Rookie pilot, the pitch, we took it out and we sold it to series, no pilot, just to series, to ABC within a month, to the network.
Okay, now tell folks, because that's a bit of a weird path for a show to get made. So tell folks the origins of The Rookie.
So I had done a couple of pilot scripts with Mark Gordon, famous producer. He produced, for TV, Grey's Anatomy, Criminal Minds, but, he started out as a big feature director. He produced Saving Private Ryan, which you were in. And so, big deal guy. And so I had done a couple of pilots with him that didn't end up getting made, but then I got an incoming phone call, which is like, okay, it was a bit of a come pitch us what this show is, because they said, we have the rights to the oldest rookie in the LAPD. And look, having been in television for a minute, there are very few fresh ways into a show, and there are 0 fresh ways into a cop show. And yet I'm like, I haven't seen that show. So I'm like, even though I actually had I think 2 other things or 3 other things that I was working on. I'm like, that one's special. I need that. So I came in and I talked to Bill, the real guy, and, we talked about his origin. And this idea of reinvention really resonated with me. This idea of somebody looking for a second chance, who's trying to change their lives, the bravery it takes to start at the bottom, like all of that, I thought was a great setup for a character and a show. The only problem was that, his catharsis to becoming that was basically him going, yeah, I think I'll become a cop. So we needed something. So the second I landed on, he's going to the bank to put his wedding ring and his divorce papers in his safe deposit box, and the bank gets robbed. I'm like, that was one of those moments that are such a joy where you're like, that's going to be great. And literally, I think what I pitched when we took it out, because you were with us when we were pitching it.
That's right. I was in those meetings.
Yeah. Was what we shot and really the origin of the thing. So that
but
was
it usually
before
doesn't happen that you pitch a show that doesn't even have a script yet.
Well, no, it does actually.
Oh.
Most pilots get sold on a pitch, not a script. It's a weird thing about television is that spec scripts, which are scripts that are written basically on, you write them yourself and then you try and take them out to sell them. Those have been historically big in features, $1 million script sale, $3 million script sale.
Gotcha.
In TV, because there's such a development culture and tons of development executives and stuff, which that number's kind of a little smaller, but they really want to get their fingers in the mix. And so when you bring them a script, it's very weirdly hard to sell a spec TV pilot. So pitching it is the norm, but I obviously called you once I had been working on it to go, would you be interested? And I thought you would say no. I thought you were like, I did 8 years of Castle, sometimes 24 episodes a season. I got a little money in the bank. I don't want to work that hard, again. So I promised you, I'm like, it's going to be an ensemble show. Okay, you'll have a life, you'll have weekends, long weekends, all that kind of stuff, which I get that promise. And so you signed on. So it's not normal necessarily to go around on pitches with the TV star sitting next to you, charming the pants off of everybody. But I think it was a bit of a winning combination, that we walked in with Mark and you and me and a good idea for a show. And so there were several places that really wanted it, and it allowed us to sort of leverage ABC enough to go, well, if you want it that much, then just order it. We won't do a pilot. We're going to go shoot this thing. And that really was great. So yeah, it was a joy.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks.
Alexi, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You did a great job.
I felt like I talked a lot, but I guess that's the
point.
That was the point.
Yeah, that was the point.
That was amazing. Brilliant. Thank you, Alexi.
Thank you, Alan.
If I were there. Oh, and thank you, Nathan, you were great.
Oh, I thought you were thanking me. I kind of jumped that gratitude. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. It was about to bleed over, but I was starting with the guest, and then it's sort of like once the guest leaves and you shut the door, you go, well done. That was you hosted a good party. Why'd you have to bring up politics?
I'm going to confess something, Alan. You not being able to be there last minute, I was a little nervous about. I mean, Alexi's my friend, so that's not going to be that top of deal. But I usually have you there holding my hand a little bit.
Yeah, we got to talk about that holding hand thing. It's getting weird. Carissa's asking questions. It's just I just think at a certain point,
I should let go.
I think everybody who just listened to that is going to realize, oh, Nathan's the one who's running this show. Alan's I'm like Buddy Holly and the Crickets. There was the cricket behind the wall, and they're like, leave it in. I'm the cricket behind the wall. You're making the music. I'm the one that, I don't know. I think we just got to go with the cricket.
I think if anything, this could be the start of something kind of amazing. I think you should start thinking about take an episode. You do a solo one-hander. Yeah. You pick a guest, you call the shots. Oh, you're smiling. You like this idea.
Wow. It's like your dad just gave you the keys to the car, guys. And you're 16. Thanks, Dad.
Back to Alexi.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I kind of got out of, and I've learned from Alexi is, oh my God, man, how smart you have to be To be a writer, to be able to create, I think you have a hand, you have a foot in that world. But this whole other side of it, the relationships, literally the budgeting, the things that you have to think about and consider about running a business, it is so out of my wheelhouse. You
Yeah.
really have to have a business sense.
Yes, and you have to be very like the world can be falling down around your ears, and you have to put on a brave face. And if anybody looks at you, they'll be like, "He's having a good day," because you truly are a leader of many people. And I've heard show running described as this, and I've had different showrunners in my experience say, "Oh yeah, that is what it's like." I've heard it described as being beaten to death by your dream. Which I've seen that happen, where you watch somebody who's an artist who has a dream, who wrote a thing, and they're trying to make a story of characters they love, and they're putting everything into it, and then the budget process, the networks, the big business of it all, the market factors, all the crap you don't ever want to pay attention to as an artist are just squeezing your dream, killing off characters you love, and your marriage is falling apart and you turn to the bottle. Just things like that can happen. Often do.
What's the attraction? What keeps one going? The sense I get from Alexi is a little more so, that's a guy who really enjoys telling stories.
Yes, it doesn't seem to be a pain. It seems like he's enjoying it. He's very smart, though. And I was impressed by what he was saying about his mother. His mother sounds like I'd like to talk to his mother. She
Yeah.
sounds like an incredible person. I
Yeah.
loved it. He was talking about all of the children's books that she was writing, like a children's book for Freud. Like all of these children's books that never hit my household. His mother seems like a very intelligent woman.
And she is. I guess when you grow up with somebody that's smart, kind of broadens your scope as to seeing what's possible. It was really nice being able to sit with Alexi. There's some other stories. He has an incredible story about how he met his wife. It's extremely hilarious and romantic. It would make a really great episode of television.
The one from the band?
Yes. Yes.
Did he mention the band's name? I feel like I didn't hear the band's name.
I don't think he did. But here's the end all be all. Much like I'm hoping this podcast opens people's eyes and hearts to what it's like to hang out with Alan Tudyk. I'm hoping now both you and our listeners have a little bit better idea of what it's like to hang out with and what Alexi Hawley is like.
Yeah.
He is, I have a pitch for the title of this episode.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
Once we had some not so horrible bosses. Who was your best boss?
Ooh. Frank Oz.
I was just showing my lovely girlfriend last night, Death at a Funeral.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we started a little late. She started to fall asleep, so we put a pause on it. But I mentioned to her how much you love and admire Frank Oz, and that when you say his name, you exhale and you say his name with reverence and a dreamy. And I went to New York and I watched Andy Nyman, who was in the film with you. I also texted him last night to check in on him. Boy, I love Andy. I went to see him in The Hangman in New York on Broadway. And I went to the stage door afterwards to go say hello to him. And I look over and I said, I think that's Frank Oz over there. And I went over to Frank Oz and I said, Mr. Oz, you don't know me. My name's Nathan. I'm a good buddy of Alan Tudyk's. And he goes, oh. And I said, and every time he says your name, he exhales and says it with a dreamy voice and just kind of looks off into the world. And he goes, you know, that son of a bitch owes me money.
Yeah, that's Frank Oz. You know, you get that he was the voice of Miss Piggy when he's so much Miss Piggy, like that kind of smart ass. Hi-ya! He's got those ready to go at all times.
Yeah, I can see why you like him. But he for you is one of your best bosses?
Yeah, because he believes in process and artistry and in a way that we all say we do, but doesn't jettison it in the face of
the machine.
Yeah, the machine, the day. I mean, we did improv. We did rehearsals, which you never get to do for a movie. But not only that, he had me come to his apartment. Not like that. He had me come to his apartment dressed in my character's costume, and I knocked on the door. And the idea was when he opened the door, I was auditioning. I was trying to get a job as a solicitor, which is a lawyer. My character was a solicitor, but my character's high through the whole movie, and he gets high really early on. He's like, we need to know who your character is before that. So I went to his house, his flat in Notting Hill, and he invited me in and interviewed me for a job.
We need to know who your character was before the drugs. That fascinates me because how can you perform something? It's a layer.
Right.
How can you paint something without a base coat?
Right. That's going to be a pretty shitty painting or a primer or a wall or whatever you're painting. Yeah, you need a foundation. So we did that, and then we went to a Starbucks, and we met the other actress who played my fiance, and he was then a new character where he was a friend of the family who's an American, and he was really loud in this Starbucks, and we had to be like, please, just yes, that's wonderful. And he's like, I've known this girl since she was this high, and like he was so crazy loud, and I had to
Out in
keep
public.
Yeah, out in public, and I had to keep my accent in public. I was so nervous about doing my English accent in public. People would be like, "What are you? Who are you? You're not English." But I got to the Starbucks, and I was like, "I'd like a latte," and the person had like a very thick Middle Eastern accent. And they were like, "That'll be £4.50," and I was like, "Oh, you don't care about my accent." We're both working on accents right now.
I'm not going to say I'm an accent expert, but I thought your accent was A, fantastic, and B, completely different from A Knight's Tale, which was an entirely different.
I was winging it. It was tough, but it was lucky when you're in England, when you're in London, to have a London accent is, there's plenty of people around you to remind you what it should be. So,
but there's also that aspect of the accent where it's like it changes every 6 blocks.
Right, you're right. Yes, because everybody comes from so many different places. I mainly sort of
Hey, are you from? And it's like 4 blocks away. Yeah, I am. How could you tell?
Right. So it's for me, it's Frank. Who is it for you? Who is your favorite boss?
I'm saying it right now. It's Alexi Hawley. This guy has dramatically improved the quality of my life. And here I am on a long-lived show.
Right.
With the kind of support that you would always dream of for your show. And a guy at the helm who takes care of us, man. That guy takes care of, like I said in the podcast, he put together a fund during both COVID and the strike. If there was someone in our community who was having a hard time, we were just making sure no one's going to suffer. No one's going to suffer. And boy, that built community, Alan. It really did. To this day, people still will say something to me about how meaningful that was. And that was all Alexi's idea.
Wow.
Yeah. Good man.
That is great. That's fantastic.
That is a not so horrible boss.
Yeah, he's a long-term relationship. Like Joss, it wasn't a fling, but it's an instrumental early relationship that you had. And now he prepped you for your long-term relationship with Alexi. This is all sounding really sexual and probably not appropriate.
You're great at that.
You know what? I think you're right. I'm inappropriate.
Is this the part where I'm supposed to say, you're over the line, Alan? This is where the part where I pull you back?
There's a sound you
talked
make.
about this.
Yes,
we talked about
there needs
this.
to be a new thing where I can tell when I'm over the line because you go, oh. I hear it in my headphones. Oh, like, why did you go there? And I've heard it twice now.
Well, Alan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming and doing the intro/outro with me. I wish you could have been there. And we totally get it. Sometimes, I mean, Comic-Con especially, you get busy. But I think we should seriously think about, or you should seriously think about, your one-hander. What you're going to do with your episode. Who are you going to have as a guest? And, you decide the program.
Wow.
I'm busy too.
Okay, good.
Until next time, my friend.
Exciting. Cheers. Oh my God, thank you for listening. You just bless your heart. You know what? If you haven't yet, why don't you head on over to our Patreon? You're going to get some bonus content. That's extra content. They're longer episodes. There's more there. You know what's better than less? More. You also get a chance to get your hands on some incredible crap. The kinds you don't need to wash off after you're done. And if you love the show, please leave us a review and tell your friends. Once We Were Spacemen is a Collision 33 production. The hell that is. The show's produced by Michelle Chapman. Siobhan Holman, oh yeah, and Josh Levy. I wear them jeans. He is of Collision 33. It's all starting to make sense. It's edited and mixed and produced by Resident Recordings with special thanks to Courtney Blomquist and Adam Townsell. Our theme music's done by Carlos Sosa. The Groove Line Horns guy? Yeah, and Joshua Moore. Artwork is done by Louis Jensen. Until next time, I swear to God I love you.
That son of a bitch owes me money.